The January 6th Select Committee held their final hearing before the midterms, and possibly their final hearing all in all. And as always, there were some very interesting moments, important ones to go through, so we'll just rapid fire hit you with that. The first is Liz Cheney making a stark warning that we need to take seriously this moment because it may not go in our direction in the future if people learn, those who have these anti-democratic ambitions, from their failures in attempting to overturn the election in 2020. Take a look at this.
A key lesson of this investigation is this: our institutions only hold when men and women of good faith make them hold, regardless of the political cost. We have no guarantee that these men and women will be in place next time. Any future president inclined to attempt what Donald Trump did in 2020 has now learned not to install people who could stand in the way.
So we've talked about this before, but it really is crucial that people take this seriously because at the end of the day, no matter how many guardrails you have in place institutionally, you do have to depend in a democratic process like the one that we have on good faith people being within the institution to make it work. And so Donald Trump, because there were enough people around him and within our institutions who didn't go along with his attempt to overturn the election, it didn't work. But the next Donald Trump, whether it's him or somebody else with similar ambitions, may learn that lesson from everything that happened in 2020 and put in only people who would go along with these types of actions, which could be absolutely disastrous for our country. They did discuss a little bit about how the Secret Service did finally turn over millions of communications from around January 6th that will hopefully be very revealing, and they're still going through all of that, so we'll see that in their final report. And then kind of they broke down the timeline of the different ideas about how Trump could claim victory regardless of if he won or lost, or claim victory even if he lost, I should say, preemptively claim victory, and then after claim it was all stolen. And so we'll do kind of before the election, during the election, and after the election as the timeline to go through. So before, as early as July, Trump was talking about claiming victory even if he lost. That's incredible. That is a great example, and it reveals so clearly that this doesn't have to do with him letting the election happen and looking and actually believing that it was stolen and thus making all these claims. No, this was him looking at a situation where he realized he could lose and not being able to accept that, and so already, way before the election, making plans to preemptively, or I should say to claim victory no matter the results. The next aspect of it was people around Trump didn't really understand why he was railing so aggressively against mail-in voting, because they were like, just let people vote the way they want to vote, and hopefully that'll help us get the highest turnout we can, because we're saying just however you can, vote. But instead, Trump was saying only vote on election day, or only vote in person, don't vote by mail. And that also, in addition to probably suppressing vote a little bit, because some people were like, I can't logistically make going in person happen because of COVID, because of whatever it is, so I'm just not going to vote. But also, it set up the red wave situation, the red wave kind of illusion, where because Trump told all of his Republican voters not to vote by mail, they primarily went in person. And those votes largely got counted first. So then early in the night, a bunch of the reports that were coming out were heavily Republican leaning numbers. And then as the mail-in votes got counted, a lot of Democrats, not wanting to go in person because it was a pandemic or whatever it is, those started getting counted just as rightful votes, but they're just getting counted later. And so then Trump pointed to that effect, pointed to that phenomenon of earlier it was heavier Republican votes getting reported, and later it was more Democratic votes getting later, and said that's proof of election fraud, when of course we know it wasn't, and it was a situation he set up by railing against mail-in voting so aggressively. And then just a reminder about how people around Trump were aware of his plans to claim victory no matter what, as was shown in Steve Bannon revealing it all.
What Trump's going to do is just declare victory. Right, he's going to declare victory, but that doesn't mean he's the winner. He's just going to say he's the winner. the Democrats, more of our people vote early that count. Theirs vote in mail. And so they're going to have a natural disadvantage, and Trump's going to take advantage of it. That's our strategy. He's going to declare himself a winner. So when you wake up Wednesday morning, it's going to be a firestorm. Also, if Trump is losing by 10 or 11 o'clock at night, it's going to be even crazier. No, because he's going to sit right there and say they stole it.
Agree.
I'm directing the Attorney General to shut down all ballot places in all 50 states. It's going to be no. He's not going out easy. If Biden's winning, Trump is going to do some crazy shit.
And he was exactly right. He's a pro-Trump ally. He loves the idea of Trump doing a coup. He's laughing about the fact of Trump getting the Attorney General to call off the voting and to shut down our election processes because Trump was losing. That is incredibly dangerous and incredibly scary. Holy smokes. Okay, and now we shift, that's all before, to during the election. What I mean by that is votes have started to get counted and reported, and Trump sees it's not looking good for him and decides he's going to preemptively claim victory. So of course, on election night, he got in front of everyone on TV and said, frankly, we did win this election. And even Mike Pence and those around Mike Pence were seeing all of these actions being taken, seeing the plan to preemptively claim victory way before enough votes had been counted to actually know that. And we're like, oh my gosh, we need to distance ourselves. And so they talked about in the hearing how people around Pence were trying to prevent him from having to get asked about this and having to be forced into either contradicting Trump or bolstering Trump's claims that he won again before the votes had been properly counted or fully counted. And then Bill Stepien also and others around Trump were saying, no, don't do this. Not enough votes have come in yet for you to claim victory, but Trump did it anyway. Of course, Rudy Giuliani loved the fact that Trump did that, and he was one of the people encouraging Trump to do so. Now moving to after the election. So once it had been called, privately, they talked about how Trump knew he lost and he would admit that to people. One of the anecdotes they shared was he's sitting watching TV and a staffer walks in and he points at the TV, presumably Biden is on the screen, and says, can you believe I lost to this guy, or something like that. And so you can see he knew the fact of the election. He's not saying, can you believe he stole it from me? He's saying, can you believe I lost to him? And then in that moment, his heart can't take the boo-boo of losing an election and just decides he's going to fully continue to lean into every possible claim he can, no matter the truth value, and claim that the election was stolen from him. Another story was after the Supreme Court decision that ruled against him, or after that didn't go his way, he was talking to his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and Cassidy Hutchinson overheard it, of course, in a staffer of Mark Meadows, and Trump said, don't let people know that I lost. Don't let people know that I lost. Take a look at Cassidy Hutchinson.
So he had said something to the effect of, I don't want people to know we lost, Mark. This is embarrassing. Figure it out. We need to figure it out. I don't want people to know that we lost.
So that to me is everything. That reveals exactly why all this happened. Trump didn't want people to know he lost. Trump didn't want himself to have to accept that he lost. And so instead, he said, democracy be damned, and leaned into breaking it down for his own purposes. The next scary step that was taken by Donald Trump was going to the Justice Department and saying, listen, I need you to claim the election was corrupt and I'll do the rest. And me and Republican congressmen and senators will do the rest. But I need you to claim that it was that it was corrupt. And of course, people in the Justice Department, some that Trump had directly appointed and up until that point had been huge Trump supporters, said, no, we can't. We looked into it. There's no evidence that's being provided. We can't make a claim like that because it's not true. And all the way to the point where people entered his office and threatened to resign over all of this.
And a number of Justice Department officials confronted the president in the Oval Office and threatened mass resignations.
And then
And I said something to the effect of, you're going to have a huge personnel blowout within hours because you're going to have all kinds of problems with resignations and other issues. And that's not going to be in anyone's interest.
So again, many people who were completely on board with Trump up until that point just couldn't go along with it. And it shows you the extreme nature of what Trump was trying to do. So we talked about this recently, but they played this phone call that Trump had with the Georgia Secretary of State, but they spliced together more moments from the call than we watched earlier on the show. And so I wanted to play it for you because it just shows you how overtly he was trying to overturn the election.
Look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state. Look, we need only 11,000 votes. We have far more than that as it stands now. We'll have more and more. So what are we going to do here, folks? I only need 11,000 votes. Fellas, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break.
What are we going to do here, fellas? I need 11,000 votes. It's incredible. This cannot go without all of the people involved getting held accountable. This is huge, historic stuff. A president of the United States attempting, not through the proper processes of, hey, I have genuine concerns about the way that the election was done, and that's why I'm going through the courts, and through complete, possible, it's being investigated, unlawful means attempting to stay in power. It is so dangerous. And we talked a lot about the fake elector scheme that was brought up again, but as a quick reminder, official electors are sent to vote based on the way that their votes were cast in the state they're coming from, and they go and they vote. Boom, that's how the Electoral College decides who's the president. Well, Trump and allies had ideas about, okay, instead we'll have some random people pretend that they're the proper electors, and Vice President Pence can go, oh, there's two sets of electors, so I don't know what to do, so I guess we can't go forward with this election. And of course, Pence didn't go along with that, but that was the idea. And here is one moment that was played from, their investigation and questioning of people, where those around him admitted, yeah, we told him that this is possibly unlawful.
Never admit, or in front of the president, that his proposal would violate the Electoral Count Act.
I believe he did on the 4th.
And Dr. Eastman confirmed this in writing. Recall this email written on January 6, in which Vice President Pence's counsel asked Dr. Eastman, did you advise the president that in your professional judgment, the vice president does not have power to decide things unilaterally? Dr. Eastman replied, he's been so advised.
So Trump was told that the plan that they were concocting in the lead up to January 6th was not lawful, but they went forward with it. And then they did outline how multiple agencies were aware in the buildup to the January 6th riots that there was this planning of a violent insurrection of the Capitol. Then they went through, as I mentioned, a summary of specifics of January 6th, the fact that Trump knew members of the crowd while he was giving his speech were armed, but he still said we should all go to the Capitol. And he also really wanted to go to the Capitol himself for some reason. And people were begging him time and time again to call off all of the individuals who were storming the Capitol, but he refused to do so, and he just sat and watched TV. So the last aspect that was covered in this, and we have to do a whole segment separate from this one on it, is this incredible footage that was released of Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, all these leaders, all these politicians doing what Trump should have been doing, which was coordinating with National Guard, coordinating with, DC mayor, and trying to get the proper people to respond to this situation. So again, if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in a separate segment, so you go check that out. And I forgot to mention, one of the biggest pieces of news coming out of these hearings is that the January 6th committee unanimously voted to subpoena Trump himself to testify. Now, who knows if that'll actually end up happening, but they are subpoenaing him to testify, which makes sense. He's the key actor in all of this, so getting him to have to testify himself under oath is very, very necessary and fascinating. So we'll continue to follow that, but I had to slap this on the end. I was actually prepping for the show and for this segment while the hearings were going on, so kind of hectic, but that's a big piece of news as well. And like I said, we'll follow very closely.